Okay, here is an equation. It's got one side and an equal sign, and it's got a 0 on the other side, but that's an equation, with one unknown, also called a variable. We don't know what it's equal to, and let's see if we can solve this. Okay, so first of all, one thing you always want to remember, see how I wrote this fraction? You have to be careful when you write 2/9 times r is the same thing as 2/9 times r over 1, right? It's 2r over 9. This is another way of writing this original expression. What I want to caution you, a lot of times if people don't quite understand the underlying meanings of things, they can manipulate things and make arithmetic mistakes with them. So I've seen students do this many times. That's why I'm warning you. You don't want to think this, 2/9 times r. Do you see that the r was written low? If I had written it kind of fast and wrote a big, long divide sign, or this looks like 2 over 9 times r, but it's really should be 2, the r should be in the numerator, because r is the same thing as r over 1. So r is in the numerator if you put it into the fraction. So as this is, it's 2/9 times r, right? But if I want to put it all into a fraction, the r goes in the numerator, not the denominator. And if you write it quickly, 2/9 r, it can look like it's in the denominator. So just a word of caution on how you write things out. And I thought of that because I didn't make that r that big. This almost could be either in the numerator or the denominator. If you look at it, it's kind of right in between. So that's fine as long as it's not in the fraction. But when you rewrite that, you can't put 2 over 9r. It's got to be 2r over 9. Okay? And minus 10/63 equals 0. Now, whenever we've got a number in front of r, some amount of r's, or the variable, x, y, whatever you're working with, and a number that's a plain number with no variables in it, you always get rid of the plain number first. And that's done generally by adding or subtracting. So if I've got this thing take away 10/63, if I add 10/63 to both sides, this take away 10/63 will add to 0. But if I added 10/63 to both sides, if I add it to one side, I've got to add it to the other side. So this now adds up to 0, leaving me with 2r over 9. And that equals 10/63. Now, how am I going to get r by itself on one side? If I take 2r divided by 9 and I multiply it by 9 over 2, then this will be 18r over 18, which is like 18 over 18 times r, or just plain r. Notice that what I always do is I multiply by the reciprocal of the fraction, if it's a fraction, in front of the letter. Reciprocal, in common sense words, is like the upside down, just switching the numerator and the denominator. Because when you do that, you're going to multiply, this is 9 times 2 is 18 r's over 9 times 2 is 18, because that's how we multiply fractions. If you go back to our rule about multiplying fractions, 2/3 times 1/2 is 2 times 1 is 2, 3 times 2 is 6. This is 1/3. And look, this is really saying you could have said 1/3 times 2/3, because multiplication is commutative. This is like saying Sorry, I copied that wrong. 1/2 times 2/3. This is like saying 1/2 of 2/3, and 1/2 of 2/3 will be 1/3. You got two of these things called thirds, and what's 1/2 of that? It's one of those things called thirds, okay? So we multiply by the reciprocal of the fraction in front of the r, and if we did that on one side, we have to do it on the other side. So we multiplied by 9/2, we have to multiply this by 9/2. So this is going to be 18r, which is just r, is equal to 90 over, this will be 63 times 2 is 6, and that's 12, 126.